Jake stood in his newly equipped kitchen, amazed by all the changes. The space now looked like a cross between a restaurant and a science laboratory. Dr. Plixara had installed capsaicin measurement devices, air filtration systems, and protective gear for the alien staff. Vexnari wore special crystal shields over her most sensitive areas. Thumbgoo had a protective coating that looked like clear plastic wrap, and Zilla sported tiny protective eyewear over each compound eye. "Today we start with tomato soup," Jake announced to his eager staff. "This will be our first official test of the graduated exposure program. How much capsaicin will you use?" Dr. Plixara asked, checking the measurement devices Jake held up. "A tiny piece of bell pepper, so small it was barely visible. Just this, maybe 1/10,000th of what I'd normally use." Even with such a tiny amount, the measurement devices started beeping softly. Vexnari's crystals shifted to a nervous yellow color. "That reading seems very high," she said. "Trust me," Jake said with a smile. "This is going to be the mildest thing I've ever made." He began cooking slowly, explaining each step to his staff and the medical team. The tomato base was simple: pureed tomatoes, a tiny amount of onion, and some herbs that were considered safe for all species. The alien spectators watched through protective glass as Jake worked. "Now comes the moment of truth," Jake said, adding the microscopic piece of pepper to the soup. The capsaicin detectors immediately registered the addition, but the levels were still far below what Dr. Plixara had determined to be the safety threshold for most species. The soup simmered gently, filling the kitchen with a pleasant aroma that seemed to intrigue even the alien observers. Jake tasted it and found it incredibly bland by his standards, but the medical equipment registered a slight spike in his endorphin levels even from this minimal exposure. "The first test subject is ready," Dr. Plixara announced. A young Zephyrian named Kexme entered the kitchen, wearing full protective gear and connected to monitoring equipment. She was a food critic from one of the station's most respected publications, and she had volunteered to be the first alien to try human cuisine. "Under the new safety protocols, are you certain this is safe?" Kexme asked nervously, her blue skin slightly pale. "As safe as we can make it," Dr. Plixara assured her. "We'll start with just one spoonful." Jake ladled a small amount of soup into a bowl. Even this tiny serving caused the capsaicin detectors to register measurable levels. He handed the spoon to Kexme, who held it as if it were a dangerous explosive. "Remember," Jake said gently, "this is food meant to bring joy. Try to relax and enjoy the experience." Kexme slowly raised the spoon to her lips. The entire room held its breath as she took the smallest possible sip. For a moment, nothing happened. Then her eyes widened in amazement. "Oh my," she whispered. This is incredible." The monitors showed elevated brain activity and what Dr. Plixara had identified as the euphoric response pattern. Kexme's skin began to shimmer with colors Jake had never seen before. "What do you taste?" Dr. Plixara asked, recording everything. "It's like ... like music in my mouth," Kexme said, tears forming in her eyes. "I can taste the tomatoes, but there's this warmth, this energy that makes everything more vivid. It's beautiful." She took another small sip, then another. With each taste, her expression grew more amazed. The sensation builds upon itself. Each flavor becomes more complex, more alive. Word spread quickly through the station. Within hours, Jake had a line of volunteers waiting to try his baby's first salsa, a mixture so mild he could drink it like water, but which provided profound sensory experiences for alien palates. The next test subject was a Mentari diplomat named Texalon. The Mentari were known for their telepathic abilities, and Dr. Plixar was curious about the enhanced cognitive effects she had observed in earlier tests. Jake prepared an even milder version of the soup, using only half the pepper he had used. For Kexme, Texalon, a graceful being with silver skin and large, dark eyes, approached the bowl with scientific curiosity rather than fear. "I am prepared," Texelon said, and took a careful sip. The effect was immediate and startling. Texelon's eyes began to glow, and suddenly Jake could hear a voice in his mind. This is remarkable. I can sense the thoughts and emotions of everyone in this room. The capsaicin has amplified my telepathic range by at least 300%. Did everyone else hear that? Jake asked, looking around the room. Several aliens nodded in amazement. Dr. Plixara's tentacles were moving rapidly as it recorded the unprecedented telepathic broadcast. The enhancement appears to be temporary but significant, Texelon continued, both speaking aloud and telepathically. I request permission to try a slightly stronger concentration. Over the following days, Jake worked with a steady stream of volunteers from different species. Each group reacted differently to his carefully calibrated preparations. The Thrakins, a warrior species known for their tough skin and slow healing, experienced rapid tissue regeneration after consuming Jake's Training Wheels curry, a dish so mild it was essentially flavored water by human standards. Thumgu had perhaps the most interesting reaction. After trying a soup with microscopic amounts of garlic and pepper, the gelatinous being's entire body became more organized and focused. My thoughts are clearer, Thumgu reported. I can process complex chemical formulas much faster than before. It's like each species has a different key that the spices unlock, Jake explained to Dr. Plixara during one of their research sessions. The same compounds that make me feel good give them completely different benefits. And you're? Certain these preparations taste good to humans? The doctor asked. Jake laughed. They taste like nothing to me. My 5-year-old nephew back home eats spicier food than this. But I'm starting to understand that spicy is relative. The breakthrough came when Jake developed his first truly successful dish for general consumption. He called it Harmony Soup, a blend of vegetables and herbs from different worlds seasoned with amounts of earth spices. So small, they had to be measured in parts per million. The first public tasting was held in the restaurant's main dining room. Representatives from 12 different species attended, each hoping to experience the legendary human cuisine they had heard so much about. Jake stood before the assembled diners, feeling nervous for the first time since arriving on the station. These weren't volunteers or test subjects. These were paying customers with high expectations. Today you'll taste something no one in the galaxy has experienced before, Jake said. This soup contains traditional Earth seasonings, carefully prepared to be safe and enjoyable for all species. He served the soup himself, watching carefully as each alien took their first taste. The reactions were everything he had hoped for and more. The Zephyrian delegates began glowing with pleasure. The Mentari ambassador started sharing positive emotions telepathically with the entire room. A Thraken general, known for his stern demeanor, actually smiled for the first time anyone could remember. This is extraordinary, announced Kicksdall, who had been skeptical of the entire project. The flavors are unlike anything in our culinary traditions, yet they complement ingredients from all our homeworlds. As Jake watched the diverse group of aliens enjoying food together, sharing an experience that transcended their different biologies and cultures, he felt a deep satisfaction. This was what cooking had always been about for him, bringing people together through shared enjoyment. Chef Martinez called Kexme, the food critic. What will you create next? Jake grinned, thinking about the pepper plants he had ordered from Earth. Well, I was thinking about introducing the galaxy to something called mild salsa, but that might take a few more months of preparation. The entire room burst into excited chatter at the prospect. Jake realized that he had not just created a new type of cuisine. He had started a revolution that would change how the galaxy thought about food forever. Jake sat in his quarters, which were really just a fancy prison cell with a bed and a small kitchen. He'd been there for 3 days, while Dr. Plixar ran tests on his kitchen staff and studied the effects of capsaicin on different alien species. Every few hours, the doctor would visit to ask Jake more questions about human eating habits. Tell me again about this ghost pepper sauce you mentioned, Dr. Plixara said, its tentacles moving rapidly as it took notes. You said your grandmother made it? Yeah, she grew the peppers in her garden, Jake replied, missing his grandmother's cooking more than ever. She used to put it on everything. Said it was good for the soul. And you consume this substance? Regularly as a child? Every Sunday dinner, Jake said with a smile. She'd make this amazing chili, and we'd all sit around the table crying and laughing at the same time. Good times. Dr. Plixara's tentacles stopped moving. You experience pain and continued eating for pleasure? It's hard to explain, Jake said. The heat makes other flavors more intense. It's like it wakes up your mouth. The doctor made more notes, then looked up at Jake with what might have been excitement. I believe I'm beginning to understand. Your species has evolved a unique relationship with pain stimuli. What you call spicy food triggers endorphin release, creating positive associations with discomfort. I guess so, Jake said. I never really thought about it scientifically, but this is revolutionary. Dr. Plixara's tentacles waved enthusiastically. Do you realize what this means? No other known species has developed this biological response. You are literally the only beings in the galaxy who can transform pain into pleasure through food. Before Jake could respond, the door chimed and Admiral Quexlon entered. The station commander was a tall, imposing figure with metallic skin and glowing blue eyes. Jake had only seen him once before, during his arrival ceremony. Dr. Plixara, the Admiral said, what is the status of your research? Fascinating developments. Admiral, the doctor replied. The human's ability to consume capsaicin is not just tolerance, it's a complete biological adaptation. But more importantly, I've discovered that controlled exposure to these compounds has remarkable effects on other species. What kind of effects? Dr. Plixara pulled up a holographic display showing brain scans and chemical analyses. Observe what happens when a Zephyrian is exposed to minimal capsaicin concentrations. The display showed Vexnari's crystal structure, but with new patterns of light flowing through it. The capsaicin triggers a euphoric response in crystalline beings. They experience what they describe as color music, a synesthetic blend of sensory input that is apparently quite pleasant. Vexnari said it was the most beautiful thing she'd ever experienced, Jake added. Once the initial shock wore off, she kept asking if she could try it again. And the effects on other species? Admiral Quexlon asked. Even more remarkable, Dr. Plixara continued. Minimal exposure caused enhanced telepathic abilities in Mintari subjects. Thrakins showed accelerated healing responses. And gelatinous. Beings like Thungu reported increased mental clarity and focus. Jake sat up straighter. Wait, you mean my cooking actually helps them? More than helps, Dr. Plixara said. In controlled doses, human spices could revolutionize medicine, recreation, and cognitive enhancement across multiple species. But the key word is controlled. The concentrations you use casually would be fatal to most beings. Admiral Quexlon studied the data with growing interest. Doctor, are you suggesting that human cuisine could be adapted for safe consumption by other species? Absolutely. With proper dilution and careful monitoring, we could create versions of human dishes that provide beneficial effects without the danger. Think of it as medicinal cooking. But would it still taste good? Jake asked. I mean, if you take out most of the spice, what's left? Dr. Plixara's tentacles curled in. What Jake had learned was the alien equivalent of a smile. That is the beautiful part. What you consider taking out most of the spice would still be intensely flavorful to alien palates. Your mildest preparations would be exotic delicacies to us. Jake thought about this for a moment. So if I made something that was barely spicy by human standards, it would be a revolutionary culinary experience for any other species. Admiral Quexlon finished. Dr. Plixara, what would you need to make this safe? A proper laboratory setup in the kitchen, the doctor replied. Equipment to measure capsaicin. concentrations, protective gear for the staff, and a graduate exposure program to slowly build tolerance in willing subjects. And Jake would supervise this program? The Admiral asked. He would be essential, Dr. Plixara said. No one else understands the nuances of human spice usage. He would need to develop new cooking techniques, create measurement systems, and train both alien and human staff in safe preparation methods. Jake felt a spark of excitement for the first time since arriving on the station. You mean I could actually cook for people again? Not just cook, Admiral Quexlon said, his glowing eyes brightening. You could pioneer an entirely new field. Xenobiological cuisine. The profits alone would be enormous. I'm not really interested in the money, Jake said. I just want to share good food with people, even if those people happen to be aliens. And that attitude, Dr. Plixara said, is exactly why this program would succeed. You understand that food is about more than nutrition. It's about connection, culture, and shared experiences. Admiral Quexlon was already making plans. I'll authorize the laboratory setup immediately. Dr. Plixara, I want you to head up the medical oversight team. And Jake, you'll need to start developing a curriculum for training other chefs in these techniques. Other chefs? Jake asked. Oh, yes, the Admiral said with what might have been a smile. Once word spreads about this discovery, every major restaurant in the galaxy will want to hire human chefs. You'll be training the first generation of interspecies culinary specialists. Jake thought about all the cooks back on Earth who were still flipping burgers and making pizza, having no idea that their skills could be revolutionary in the larger galaxy. What about my staff, Vexnari, Thungu, and Zillith? They volunteered to continue working with you, Dr. Plixara said. In fact, they're quite excited about the project. Vexnari says she wants to be the first alien to build a tolerance to what she calls human fire food. And the restaurant? Jake asked. We'll reopen next week, Admiral Quexlon announced. But this time, it will be much more than a restaurant. It will be a research facility, a training center, and a cultural exchange hub, the first of its kind in the galaxy. Jake stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the busy corridors of the station. Aliens of dozens of species moved about, their daily lives completely unaware that their universe was about to change. He thought about his grandmother's ghost pepper sauce, still sitting in a containment unit in the medical bay, and smiled. When do we start? He asked. We already have, Dr. Plixara said. The first test subjects are waiting in the medical bay. They're volunteers from various species who want to experience human cuisine under controlled conditions. What am I going to make for them? Start simple, the doctor advised. Perhaps a basic tomato soup with minimal pepper content. Something that would be considered bland by human standards. Jake laughed. My grandmother would roll over in her grave if she knew I was calling tomato soup exotic cuisine. Your grandmother, Admiral Quexlon said thoughtfully, sounds like. She will be very proud of what you're about to accomplish. As Jake prepared to leave his quarters and return to the kitchen, he realized that he was no longer just a chef from Texas. He was about to become something completely new, a bridge between species, a teacher of flavors, and maybe even a healer. All because he happened to like his food a little spicy. Jake sat in the medical bay while Dr. Plixara examined him with strange devices that hummed and beeped. The octopus-like doctor had insisted on checking Jake for signs of chemical exposure after what happened in the kitchen. Jake felt fine, but he was starting to realize that what seemed normal to him might be dangerous to everyone else on the station. Your body temperature is stable, Dr. Plixara said, waving a scanner over Jake's mouth. No tissue damage detected. Most unusual. I feel fine, Jake said for the 10th time. I eat spicy food all the time back on Earth. Yes, but you consume raw capsaicin compounds. The concentration should have caused severe burns to your mouth and throat. The doctor's tentacles moved rapidly as it typed notes. Your species must have remarkable resistance to chemical irritants. Through the medical bay window, Jake could see his alien kitchen staff in the next room. They were all connected to various machines and still looked terrible. Vexnari's crystals were a dull gray color. Thumbgoo had shrunk to half its normal size, and Zillith was wearing some kind of breathing mask over its insect features. "Are they going to be okay?" Jake asked. "They will recover," Dr. Plixara said. "But exposure to such concentrated capsaicin could have been fatal. They are lucky you only used a small amount." Jake thought about the pepper he'd used. It had seemed so mild, barely spicier than a bell pepper. Back home, he put hotter peppers in his breakfast eggs every morning. "I really didn't think it was that strong." "That is the problem," said a new voice. Jake turned to see Commander Breakter, the station security chief, entering the medical bay. The alien looked like a cross between a bear and a rhinoceros, with thick gray skin and small, intelligent eyes. Word is spreading through the station that the human chef is either incompetent or dangerous. "I'm not dangerous," Jake protested. "I'm just a cook." "A cook who nearly killed 3 kitchen workers on his first day," Breakter said grimly. "The restaurant industry takes safety very seriously. There are calls to send you back to Earth immediately." Jake felt his heart sink. He'd barely been on the station for 6 hours, and already his career was over. "There has to be something I can do. I can learn to cook without spices." "Without spices?" Dr. Plixara's tentacles stopped moving. "But that is what makes human food unique. The preliminary taste tests showed that human cuisine has flavor complexities no other species has achieved. Maybe we could find a way to make it safe," Jake suggested. "There must be some way to reduce the intensity." Before anyone could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the medical bay. Red lights flashed, and an announcement echoed through the station. "Security alert. Potential biological weapon detected in restaurant sector. All personnel maintain safe distance." "What's happening?" Jake asked. Breakthrough was already moving toward the door. "Someone found the pepper you were cooking with. Station sensors identified. It has a Class 7 chemical irritant." They rushed back to the kitchen area, where Jake saw a crowd of aliens gathered at a safe distance. In the center of the corridor sat the small piece of pepper Jake had been cooking with, now surrounded by emergency containment barriers. A robot was carefully picking it up with mechanical arms while scientists scanned it with various instruments. "This is ridiculous," Jake said. "It's just a pepper." "Just a pepper?" One of the scientists, a tall being with purple skin and 4 arms, looked at Jake in amazement. "Do you realize what you've brought onto this station? The capsaicin concentration in this sample is off our measurement scales. But I eat them all the time," Jake said weakly. "You eat them?" The scientist's 4 arms began moving rapidly as it took notes. "How are you still alive?" A crowd was gathering, and Jake could hear whispers and murmurs from dozens of different alien species. Some were pointing at him, others were backing away. He caught fragments of conversation. "The human eats poison for pleasure. No wonder they're so aggressive. Chemical warfare disguised as cooking." "Perhaps," said a new voice, "we should conduct a proper demonstration." Everyone turned to see Kickstall approaching, followed by several other important-looking aliens. The elegant blue-skinned being seemed calm, but Jake noticed that it was keeping a careful distance. "A demonstration?" Breakter asked. "Yes," Kickstall said. "If the human claims this substance is safe for his species, let him prove it. Under controlled conditions, of course." Dr. Plixar immediately protested. "That would be extremely dangerous. We don't understand human physiology well enough to risk such an experiment." "I'll do it," Jake said. Everyone stared at him. "I'll eat the pepper. You can monitor me with all your medical equipment. Maybe that will prove I'm not trying to hurt anyone." The crowd grew larger as word spread through the station. Jake found himself in the center of a large observation area, surrounded by medical equipment and dozens of alien spectators. Dr. Plixar had insisted on full monitoring, sensors attached to his body. Cameras recording everything, and emergency medical teams standing by. "Are you certain about this, human Jake?" Dr. Plixara asked. "Once you consume the capsaicin, we cannot reverse the effects." "I'm sure," Jake said, though he was beginning to feel nervous with so many eyes watching him. "It's really not that dangerous." They had prepared a small piece of the pepper, about the size of a grape. To Jake, it looked perfectly ordinary. To the aliens watching, it might as well have been a piece of radioactive material. "Beginning test now," Dr. Plixara announced. "Subject will consume one Class 7 chemical irritant sample." Jake picked up the pepper and examined it. It was actually milder than what he usually ate, but he could see the alien spectators backing away even further. Someone in the crowd whispered, "He's actually going to do it." "Here goes nothing," Jake said, and popped the pepper into his mouth. Reaction was immediate and dramatic. Alarms started blaring as the medical sensors detected changes in Jake's body temperature and brain activity. The crowd gasped and several aliens fainted. Dr. Plixara's tentacles flew over the medical controls as it tried to monitor Jake's vital signs. "Subject's internal temperature rising," Dr. Plixara announced. "Detecting massive neurological activity. Heart rate elevated." Jake chewed the pepper thoughtfully. It had a nice flavor, with just a hint of heat. "It's actually pretty good," he said. "A little mild for my taste, but not bad." "Mild?" Dr. Plixara stared at the medical readings. "Your body temperature has increased by 2 degrees. Your pain. Receptors are firing constantly. How are you not unconscious?" "I don't know," Jake said honestly. "It just tastes like food to me." The crowd was completely silent now. Jake could see fear, amazement, and something that might have been respect in their alien faces. He realized that he had just done something that seemed impossible to them. He had eaten what they considered a deadly poison and asked for seconds. "Incredible," whispered one of the scientists. "The human physiology is more resilient than we imagine." "Or more insane," muttered someone else. Breakthrough stepped forward, his expression serious. "Human Jake, I am placing you under protective custody. For your own safety and the safety of others on this station." "Protective custody?" Jake asked. "But I just proved I'm not dangerous." "No," Breakthrough said slowly. "You just proved that you are the most dangerous being on this station. Anyone who can consume Class 7 chemical irritants without harm is clearly a potential threat to station security." As security officers escorted Jake away, he heard the crowd behind him breaking into excited discussions. Some aliens were calling him a hero, others a monster. A few were already asking if they could try human food themselves. Though most seemed terrified of the idea, Jake realized that his simple cooking demonstration had just changed everything. He was no longer just a chef. He was now seen as some kind of superhuman being who could survive things that would kill others. The question was, what was he going to do about it? Jake's first glimpse of orbital station Harmony took his breath away. The massive structure floated in space like a glittering jewel, its crystal spires catching the light from 3 different suns. Transport ships moved in and out of docking, bays like busy insects, carrying passengers and cargo from across the galaxy. Jake pressed his face against the window of the shuttle, watching the station grow larger as they approached. "First time off Earth?" asked Captain Ross, the human pilot who had transported Jake from the Lunar Gateway. "First time off the ground?" Jake replied, still amazed by the sight. "I've never even been on an airplane before." The docking process was smooth, and soon Jake found himself walking through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. The station was enormous, with multiple levels and sections dedicated to different purposes. He saw beings of all shapes and sizes going about their business. Some walked on 2 legs like humans. Others floated or rode or moved in ways that defied description. A tall, elegant creature with blue skin and silver hair approached him. It wore what looked like a chef's uniform, but made from materials that seemed to shift color in the light. "You must be Jake Martinez," the being said in perfect English, though its voice had a musical quality. I am Kickstall, head of the Galactic Culinary Council. Welcome to Harmony Station. Jake shook the offered hand, surprised by how cold it felt. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm excited to get started. Excellent. Let me show you to your new kitchen. They walked through busy corridors filled with shops, restaurants, and entertainment venues. Jake saw food stalls selling things he couldn't identify, glowing fruits, crystalline vegetables, and liquids that moved on their own. The smells were strange, too. Nothing like the familiar sense of earth spices and cooking meat. Your restaurant is called Stellar Delights, Kickstall explained as they walked. We serve the finest cuisine in this sector. Our customers expect perfection. They arrived at a set of large doors that slid open to reveal the most incredible kitchen Jake had ever seen. The space was huge, with cooking surfaces that seemed to float in midair and equipment that hummed with energy. Storage areas lined the walls, filled with ingredients from dozens of different worlds. Your staff is waiting to meet you, Kickstall said, leading him toward three figures standing near the main cooking area. The first was unlike anything Jake had ever imagined. It looked like a person-shaped collection of living crystals, each one catching and reflecting light in different colors. As Jake watched, the crystals shifted from pale blue to warm yellow. This is Vexnari, Kickstall said. The color changes indicate emotional states. Yellow means curious and friendly. Vexnari stepped forward, and Jake noticed that each footstep created a soft chiming sound. Honored to meet you, Chef Martinez, it said in a voice like wind chimes. I am eager to learn human cooking methods. The second being was even stranger. It looked like a large gray blob with a vaguely humanoid shape. It had no fixed features, but Jake could see what might have been eyes floating beneath its surface. This is Thumgu, Kickstall continued. Gelatinous beings absorb nutrients through their skin, so traditional eating is foreign to them. But they have excellent understanding of food chemistry. Greetings, human Jake, Thumgu said, its voice bubbling like thick liquid. I have studied your food molecules. Very complex arrangements. The third staff member looked like a giant insect, but one that stood upright like a person. Its compound eyes glittered with dozens of tiny reflections, and its four arms moved independently as it arranged ingredients on a counter. And this is Zilith, Kickstall said. Insectoid beings have incredible precision and can see in 12 dimensions, perfect for food presentation. Welcome, Chef Martinez, Zilith clicked, its voice sounding like two pieces of metal tapping together. I look forward to learning your visual arrangement techniques. Jake looked at his new staff and tried to hide his nervousness. He'd worked with difficult people before, but never with beings who weren't even remotely human. Well, I'm looking forward to working with all of you. Maybe we should start with something simple? Excellent idea, Kickstall said. Your first service is tomorrow night. We have reservations from some very important customers, delegates from the Zephyrian Trade Union. After Kickstall left, Jake stood alone with his alien staff, unsure of how to begin. The kitchen was full of equipment he didn't recognize, and the ingredients in the storage areas looked nothing like what he was used to. Maybe we should start with something basic, Jake said. Do you have anything like bread here? Vexnari's crystals shifted to orange, which Jake hoped was a good sign. We have grain products from several worlds. What did you have in mind? Jake decided to make quesadillas. They were simple, tasty, and shouldn't be too strange for aliens to understand. He found ingredients that looked close to what he needed, something like flour, something like cheese, and vegetables that resembled onions and peppers. I'll make a traditional human dish, Jake explained as he worked. It's called a quesadilla. Very basic, very mild. He mixed the dough and rolled it out while his staff watched with fascination. Thumgu absorbed some of the flour through its skin and immediately began analyzing the molecular structure. Zilith used its multiple eyes to examine Jake's technique from every angle. Vexnari's colors kept shifting as it tried to understand what Jake was doing. Now for the filling, Jake said, heating a pan. He added a small amount of oil and threw in the chopped vegetables. The onions started to sizzle, and he added what he thought was a very mild pepper, something that looked like a green bell pepper, but with a slight reddish tint. The reaction was immediate and terrifying. Vexnari's crystals flashed bright red and began making alarm sounds like a fire siren. Thumgu's entire body started convulsing and made horrible gurgling noises. Zilla's fell backward, all four arms clutching at its head. "What's happening?" Jake shouted, but none of his staff could answer. They were all making sounds of distress and seemed to be in serious pain. The kitchen doors burst open and a creature in a white coat rushed in. It looked like a cross between an octopus and a doctor, with multiple arms carrying medical equipment. "Emergency! Emergency!" the creature shouted. "Chemical weapons detected in kitchen area." "Chemical weapons?" Jake said, confused. "I'm just cooking vegetables." The doctor creature began spraying Jake's staff with some kind of cooling mist. Slowly, there, distress seemed to ease. Vexnari's crystals faded from red to a worried purple. Thumgu stopped convulsing but continued to make soft, whimpering sounds. Zillith was still on the ground, breathing heavily. "What did you do to them?" the doctor demanded, examining Vexnari with a device that beeped rapidly. "I was making quesadillas," Jake said weakly. "I just cooked some onions and peppers." "Very mild peppers." The doctor creature looked at Jake with what might have been horror. "You use capsaicin compounds in a confined space with unprotected beings? Are you trying to kill them? Capsaicin? You mean the peppers were hot?" Jake looked at the innocent-looking vegetables still sizzling in the pan. "But they barely had any heat at all. I can eat them raw." "You can eat them raw?" The doctor stared at Jake as if he'd announced he could breathe poison gas. "What kind of creature are you?" Jake was beginning to understand that this assignment might be more complicated than he'd thought. He looked at his staff, who were all staring at him with expressions of fear and amazement. "I'm just a cook," he said quietly. "I'm just a cook who likes spicy food." Jake Martinez wiped the sweat from his forehead as he finished cleaning the grill at his small restaurant in Austin, Texas. The lunch rush was over, and only a few customers remained scattered across the worn wooden tables. His place wasn't fancy, but people came from all over the city for his famous breakfast tacos and spicy salsa verde. Jake had been running Martinez Kitchen for 8 years now, ever since he got out of culinary school. The bell above the door chimed, and Jake looked up to see a woman in a crisp black suit walking in. She looked out of place among the casual diners in their t-shirts and jeans. Her hair was pulled back tight, and she carried a silver briefcase that seemed to shimmer in the afternoon light. "Are you Jake Martinez?" she asked, her voice carrying a slight accent he couldn't place. "That's me," Jake replied, setting down his cleaning cloth. "You here for lunch? We're still serving." The woman smiled and extended her hand. "I'm Agent Collins from the Galactic Cultural Exchange Program. I have a business proposition for you." Jake had heard about the program on the news. Ever since first contact with alien civilizations 5 years ago, Earth had been slowly integrating into something called the Galactic Community. Most people went about their daily lives as usual, but there were always stories about humans being selected for various off-world jobs and projects. "I'm listening," Jake said, shaking her hand. Agent Collins opened her briefcase and pulled out a tablet. "Your restaurant has been recommended by our food analysis team. We've been monitoring various human establishments, and your cuisine shows remarkable complexity and innovation." Jake raised an eyebrow. "You've been watching my restaurant." "Not watching, exactly. We've been sampling foods from different human cultures to understand your species' culinary development. Your establishment ranked very highly in our flavor profile tests." She turned the tablet toward him. On the screen was a detailed analysis of his menu, complete with molecular breakdowns of his signature dishes. Jake saw his grandmother's salsa recipe displayed as a complex chemical formula. "We have a client," Agent Collins continued, "a very prestigious restaurant chain in the Andromeda sector. They're looking for a head chef who can bring new and exciting flavors to their menu. The pay is substantial, and the experience would be unlike anything available on Earth. Jake sat down at the nearest table, his mind racing. You're talking about cooking for aliens? Exactly. The Galactic Culinary Council runs the finest dining establishments in known space. They cater to the most sophisticated palates from dozens of different species. They're particularly interested in what they call human flavor innovation. The tablet showed images of incredible space stations and restaurants that looked like crystal palaces floating among the stars. Jake saw beings he recognized from news reports, tall, elegant creatures with blue skin, others that looked like walking gemstones, and some that seemed to be made of living liquid. What kind of food do they usually serve? Jake asked. Agent Collins scrolled through more images. From what I understand, most galactic cuisine focuses on nutrition and texture. Flavors tend to be mild and pleasant. They're very excited about human food because we apparently use something called aggressive seasoning that no other species has developed. Jake almost laughed. Aggressive seasoning? You mean like salt and pepper? Among other things, yes. They're particularly interested in your use of what they call thermal compounds, spices that create heat sensations. Now Jake did laugh. They mean hot peppers? That's what got their attention? Your jalapeño and habanero peppers are considered exotic ingredients of the highest caliber. The preliminary taste test caused quite a stir among their food critics. Jake thought about his grandmother's ghost pepper sauce sitting in the back refrigerator. If Galapagos were exotic, he could only imagine what that would do to them. What exactly would I be doing? He asked. You be the head chef at their flagship restaurant on Orbital Station Harmony. It's a massive space station that serves as a cultural hub for the entire sector. You'd have a full kitchen staff, unlimited budget for ingredients, and complete creative freedom. She showed him more details on the tablet. The pay was more money than Jake had ever dreamed of. The contract was for 2 years, with the option to extend. They will provide housing, transportation, and even help him ship ingredients from Earth. There's just one thing, Agent Collins said, her expression becoming slightly serious. The Galactic Culinary Council has very high standards. They've never hired a human chef before. You be representing our entire species. Jake looked around his small restaurant. The walls were covered with photos of regular customers, local newspaper clippings about his food, and his grandmother's old recipes framed behind the counter. This place was his life, but it was also pretty small compared to what was being offered. When would I need to leave? He asked. The transport ship arrives next week. But I should mention, you be working with a completely alien staff. None of them have any experience with human food preparation methods. Jake nodded slowly. He'd worked with difficult kitchen staff before, but never with beings from other planets. Still, cooking was cooking, right? The basics had to be the same everywhere. What kind of aliens would I be working with? Agent Collins pulled up files on his future staff. Your sous chef will be Vexnari, a crystalline from the Vega system. They communicate through color changes and have an excellent sense of timing. Your prep cook is Thumgu, a gelatinous from the outer rim, very reliable, absorbs nutrients through skin contact. And your guard manger is Zilith, an insectoid from the Centauri cluster. Compound eyes, sees in 12 dimensions. Excellent. For presentation work, Jake stared at the alien profiles. None of them looked anything like the customers he was used to serving. Do they eat the same kind of food? That's part of the challenge, Agent Collins admitted. Each species has different dietary requirements and taste preferences. But the Galactic Culinary Council believes that human cuisine can bridge these differences. They think your food has universal appeal. Jake thought about the last time he'd served his 3-alarm chili to a newcomer. The poor guy had needed 3 glasses of milk and still left with tears in his eyes. But maybe aliens were tougher than humans when it came to spicy food. I'll need to think about it, Jake said. Agent Collins nodded and left her contact information. I understand this is a big decision. But Jake, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You be the first human chef in galactic fine dining. Think of what you could learn, what you could teach them about Earth's culinary traditions. After she left, Jake sat alone in his restaurant, looking at the tablet she'd given him. The images of the space station restaurant were incredible. Dining rooms with views of nebulae, kitchens equipped with technology he couldn't even identify, and the chance to cook for beings from across the galaxy. He thought about his grandmother, who had taught him that food was about more than just eating. It was about bringing people together, sharing culture, and making connections. Maybe that was exactly what the galaxy needed. Someone who understood that cooking was really about caring for others. Jake picked up his phone and dialed Agent Collins' number. When she answered, he took a deep breath. "When do I leave?"